Hey there, everyone. Today I want to discuss the topic of screen scraping. So, screen scraping is a process whereby you can extract data from a website, and the data can be almost any type. It can be basic HTML, it can be Java, it can be CSS. Um, you can have a CSV file embedded into a website. You can extract that. Text file, same. You can extract data from what? An Excel file saved on the website. There's so many different sources, right? So when you understand screen scraping, you can go out into the web and automate the task of collecting data that's stored in some site in a fashion that's very quick, easy to use, not prone to error, because people, if they have to go into a website, log in, and copy and paste things, inevitably there will be mistakes. The computer will not make mistakes, right? So once you learn this technique, you can do some pretty cool, pretty um, amazing things quickly and effortlessly. So data is often accessed through a variety of ways. Usually the web page itself, the landing page, it's called the first page that you hit when you land on the website, or you can drill down to different levels within the web page. I'm going to produce a video about that, how to extract information from parent-child relationships and concatenate that together. So keep an eye out for that. But this is just a basic introduction overall to screen scraping and generally how this works, okay? And we have to be aware that these techniques are useful and very enticing to use, but there could be some kind of penalty or restriction or requirement that you don't do screen scraping on some websites, right? So you really have to look at the fine print and understand, is this allowed in the first place? And if it's allowed, then you're free to do whatever you want. If it's not allowed, you probably can't do it, or you probably have to ask for permission or something like that. So we'll try to avoid the legal ramifications of screen scraping and just focus on the technical aspects here. So let me look at the first example here. Import pandas. We can get this pandas dot read underscore HTML. So the base URL is right here. This is a Wikipedia table. If I go over to the actual table, we'll see the table right here. Okay, so this is what? GDP by country. Okay, let's go back to the screen scraper. And we know that this is the third table. There's 7 tables total. And we know this is number 3 just because I tested the code and counted it. So you might not get the first table on the first try. You'd have to do a couple iterations. That's what I had to do to figure out which one is the table. Okay, so within about a second or so, we've got our information. And this is what I was just alluding to. There's 7 tables on that page. We are looking for the third table. This is 0 base, so we want 0, 1, 2. This is going to be the third table on the page. And if I go up, that is probably one table right there. The chart, the bar chart, and then the global world chart is probably the second table. And then we know that this is the third because they just ran it. We got the results. So we have 109 as a header, and the estimate is 100,834,796, and that's exactly what we see here. Okay, so pretty simple, pretty straightforward, but of course it gets way more complicated than this. So stick with me. This does get a little bit intimidating, but after some trial and error, you can figure this out. And again, you can do some really amazing, really cool stuff to facilitate your tasks and speed up how you do your job, and really impress your client and your stakeholders too, right? Because you can create deliverables that are fast, efficient, free from errors and mistakes, and really just save yourself a whole lot of time. Let me look at this next web page here. I'm going to close this. We're done with this guy. Okay, so if I hit F12 on my browser, or if I right-click on a page, I can go to Inspect. Let me close this. Hit F12 on a keyboard. Okay, we have all the code behind the page popping up down here. Okay, so that's all the source code, and you can go to the console debugger. The network will show you any kind of 200 items. These are API calls, so 200 is a success. Anything that's not 200 is not performing correctly, right? And then you have a get, put options. Those are all different types of technical attributes of the page itself. We won't get into that. Some of those things I don't totally understand too. I understand the math, statistics, the computer science, the finance of things, but I don't understand all of the how to build a website and so on and so forth. So let's just focus on the screen scraping today. So if I right click and hit inspect queue, it's going to take me directly to this item right here. And if I put the mouse over it, you'll see the highlight. This is Liberty. If I go just a little bit above that, you'll see different highlights. So that is what another property on the page. I'm not sure what that is. Okay, and this is the final score. So there's a couple things that we're interested in here. The team name and then the team score. So once we know the class name for team name and T score, we can use that to do our class search. So here we have GamePod game team name. That is the identifier for that HTML element, right? And this is a span. This is a type class, and we have Beautiful Soup finding all. So there's a couple libraries we're employing here. Beautiful Soup is to read the HTML. Soup is the library, right? And find all is telling the computer, go ahead and find all of these elements that have this name, GamePod game team name. Okay, so I'll admit it's a little bit intimidating. The first couple times I tried to do this, I almost gave up. But if you stick through it and learn how this stuff works, it's really going to save you a ton of time, and it's pretty cool too. So here we have the team name. I just searched for it because I know the element name, the element ID, that's the identifier. And if I go down here, copy paste this and go over here, we'll see where this is coming from. Okay, so everything is organized in a way that it's easy for the web page designer to implement this. It's not necessarily easy for yourself and myself to use that, but again, we can still figure it out. So we have the first two elements, okay? We are going to combine those and use a function here to combine all the team names and all the team scores, okay? I'm going to run this as I talk so you can see how this works in real time. I'm going to share all this code with you, so don't worry about all the minutia here and all the details. I'm going to post the code with the video. You'll have an HTML file that you can download, double-click, and open, and you'll have all the source code that I'm seeing right here. You can copy and paste that into your Jupyter notebook and run it as is. So that is giving us all the team names and team scores, but we want to do this over a period of time from start date beginning of this year until the end of January of this year. So 2024, 1/31 would be the ending date, and the start date is 24/1/1, okay? So we know the start date. If I double click on this, we have the start date. We have the start date over here. The start date is the current date. All right. And as long as the current date is less than the end date, we're going to keep looping here. And this is current date year. We're concatenating this all into the string. Okay. Current date month and then current date day. So we can go ahead and get 31 days worth of data. Okay. Then we're going to loop everything, load everything into a bunch of lists. These are list objects down here. Okay, and then convert all of that into a data frame. So it's pretty easy to work with. You can do plotting, charting. I'm not doing that in this video, but I have several videos of how to create these plots and charts. We're just focusing on screen scraping with Python today. So when I finished this all off, I noticed that there was a little bit of data that needed to be cleaned up. When you do the screen scraping, a lot of times it doesn't come in very clean. You have to look for patterns or clean the data. You have to refine it, make sure the data is evolved enough and it's safe to use. If it actually comes to you in a very primitive fashion, right, you have to clean this up and do a little work. But everything ran. We have the date, we have the team score, team 1, team 2, and then I convert everything into a data frame. So you can see a nice layout down here, and then you can do any kind of plotting, charting. Just use this as a base report or whatever you want. Okay, so that's the next example. Now let's look at an example using JSON strings. So this is JavaScript object notation. That's what it stands for. I'm going to close this thing right here. We're done with this. Now all of the data on this page is saved as JavaScript object notation. So it looks a little bit weird to look at. It's not human friendly, but this is very machine friendly. It's very fast, very compact, very efficient for the computer to go through and read all of these elements on the Java site. All right, and once we pull that off, we can clean that up, and we can put that into another data frame like we saw before with the HTML elements, and we can have nice structured data at the end, right? So the first thing we're going to do is response to the or request to the URL. We're going to go fetch the data from the URL. I'm going to control enter this. This runs pretty fast because it's not too much to to print here, and we haven't really done a lot other than the fetch. So now we can see how the JavaScript object notation is organized. We have the home team ID, that's the identifier, right? The away team ID. So it's interesting they're not using names, but they will combine the names at the end and then use those, right? So a lot of computer science and machine learning, data science is all based on numbers. It's very easy for the machine to work with numbers. It's not so easy to work with names. People are the opposite, right? Names make a lot more sense than numbers, or it's just easier to memorize people's names rather than combinations of numbers. So a lot of times the data is stored in a numeric fashion, but we have to convert that into some kind of naming convention. So we did the call to JSON. That was fine. We're going to do a short loop here for game and JSON data.get. So we can see the JSON data is response data that we just made as a request to that URL, right? So we're going to try to normalize the data, and it's called what is it? Normalization or exploding of the JSON string. So it's compact in a way that's not super easy for people to read. But again, once we explode it, it's going to be very straightforward and very consumable by any person, right? So we have the first loop here for game and JSON.data. We're getting all the names. Not games, game ID, match ID, home ID, and then the market where they played. Then we need another loop for market and game.get, and another loop for book and game.get, and another loop. So this gets a little bit convoluted here, but it's not too bad. Just stick with me. You just have to find out what the structure of the JSON string is, and then explode it accordingly. I'm going to hit Control Enter to run this cell. Okay, and then we're getting all the details. If we go back at the site, it's a little difficult, but we have name, odd type, game name, book ID. Let me get the group name. Let's look for that over here. Okay, so here's the first group name. Here's another group name. You just have to look at the structure of this. And if this keeps on going, when you expand it, then you have to keep on going and going till you reach the lowest base level, right? It can be very granular like this, and it's stored in many different levels, or it can be pretty straightforward like we saw in the first example. So this is opening spread. Let's look for this. Here it is, opening spread. Okay, 1.5 and opening spread 1.6. So you can tell this is sports-related gambling data. Okay, let's go back there. That is the last level. So we had a couple levels that we had to handle over there, but it's not too bad. And I had to create an if statement. If outcomes in book, then do this, else do it this way. So sometimes some of these records would have an outcome level and some of them would not. So it adds another layer of complexity. But these are pretty much the same. If there's an outcome in the book, you have to grab it. If it's not, this right here, from name to opening spread, is going to be exactly the same. So once you figure out there's either an outcome or not outcome, you get the normalized market exploded correctly, and then copy and paste down here to the else. Okay, otherwise the computer is going to have an error, and it's not going to be able to produce the results, right? So we still have kind of funky looking string of data points there. But don't worry about it. We're going to do the final explode and get that into a list. So we have df lists here. Lists are very easy to work with. They're very flexible. You can add, delete, append. Quite flexible compared to a tuple, which is not flexible. You could create another tuple off of a tuple, but you can't add to a tuple, right? Once it's created. And you can put everything into a dictionary. And dictionary is a key value pair. So you would have like 0, name, 1, name, 2, name, so on and so forth. So you always have like a numeric and naming convention pattern. And that's fine in some cases, but in most cases, the list is the most flexible thing to work with, or data frame. So here we have a list object. I'm going to append everything to the list. That's what .append does. This is market data. So if you look at market data here, that much is there. That's getting all the details. Then we have df list. So everything is appended into this list that we created at the beginning, a blank list, and then from that list we can convert that into a data frame. I'm going to hit Control Enter, run it, and then we have the final result. So market name, odd type, so on and so forth, down to the opening spreads. And some of these are nans. That's okay. Here's the opposite. There's just no data for these. Odds, opening odds, and so on and so forth. So that's another way to do this kind of thing. If the data is delivered to you in JSON format, you're going to have to explode it and then normalize it so it's easier for a person to read or to plot or chart. You can create a plot based on this data right here. You cannot create a chart based on this data. As far as I know, maybe there's some new tool that came out recently, but as far as I know, like that's not going to be read by most plotting libraries, Matplotlib or Plotly or Bokeh. I don't think they're going to handle it, but they'll handle this very easily. So this is an API I came across around 6 months ago, probably. So this requires an API to log into the site. Let me shut this down. I don't need this anymore. You can get the API here. Okay. I'm not going to rerun this because I did before. I think the API expired. I looked at this and it wasn't working as of a few days ago. So I reverted back to an older version I have. But again, you put in your API key. Here is the GET request. Okay, it's asking for the API key. And if you don't understand this, completely fine. Just look at the documentation. They have code samples here. Apparently just a few. Oh, no, here it comes. It took a second to populate. So they have code samples. You can follow that. You can apply for the API. They're going to, API docs. That's going to be very useful too, right? They're going to give you all kinds of information about how their API works. So just browse through that, understand the basics. Once you have a few items for the header, it's going to be sports, regions, markets, odds, date format. There's only a few that you have to be aware of, and you'll get that from the documentation, right? So you're doing the sports underscore response status code not equal to 200 print failure, right? So sometimes you'll make a request and either the data doesn't exist or the API is down or the whole website is down or something like that. So if you get not a 200 result from your request, it's going to be an error, and there could be a bunch of different errors. If it's 200, it has to be success. So if it's 200, this is going to be successful. We can go ahead and grab the JSON. Again, this comes in JSON format, and then we can normalize it and then print the final data frame. Here's the DF. We have normalized data down here that we're converting into a pandas data frame, and then we have the final data frame at the bottom, right? So again, this is a little bit intimidating for a person to read. It's super fine for a computer to read, but for a human, really want to create a data frame and get this in the form of columns and rows, okay? So again, we have another JSON request to another website. This is PropGames time. Okay, let me close this. We're done. Okay, similar to the example we saw just a few steps ago. So this is going to be another JSON string you have to go through, understand what's happening, populate the data into a list. Lists are very flexible and easy to work with. And then you can save it. I'm saving this down here as a CSV file. You can display it in the browser, anything you want. So a lot of these are either HTML, and you'll use Beautiful Soup, or JSON requests. And you'll use the JSON normalizer. It's called normalizing the JSON string, or explode, JSON explode or JSON normalize. That's the two typical ways to do that. There's another way to do screen scraping using Selenium and web browser. So if the website is very dynamic and you have to click through different links or click on a link to drill down to get information and then go back to the previous link, you can use Selenium for that. I have a couple videos I'm going to put out very soon on that. That's kind of a specialized way of screen scraping because you're automating all the tasks that the person would do by all the click events. Or entering data into a login portal, right? You can enter username and password, then click the go button, and then click on different results that pop up in the next page, the next landing page that you hit. So that's another way to do that. I've got a couple videos about that. That's kind of next level stuff, so I'm not going to include that here. That's a little bit more, I guess, technical or very niche oriented. We're just trying to keep it general in this example. So this is using a Mozilla agent with headers to get data from, let me close this, from this website right here. Is this, oh, you know what, maybe let me do this again because I think probably pasted the wrong thing in there before I started recording the video. Not sure what that was, but anyways, okay. That was some other screen scraping thing. So many. Okay, so here it has calendar dates for stock exchanges all over the world. So you can see this is going now currently from today down into December, because what happened in the past is the past. We're not concerned about what happened in July or May because we're past those dates, right? But this is going forward and showing you which exchanges are open or closed, which ones are closed probably, on which dates all around the world. So that's pretty cool. You have, I think, about 60 or so stock exchanges, and they all have different holidays, right? If you look at the major calendar, I saw it before, I'm not seeing it now, almost any day of the year is a holiday somewhere in one of these countries. So it's pretty, some countries have dozens of holidays, some have about 10 or 11, and US we have about 10, I think. So it can be anything. It's all over the place. So this code is going to do a Windows header request and get a response. Should be 200 because the website is up. I just saw it. And it's going to go ahead and find all of these TD class elements. So we have to look for this class. If I copy this, go back here, and hit my F12 button, should see that popping up. F12, where are you? Okay, got it. And then search for this. Okay, there's the first one, right? So put that right over there. You'll see this is the date. This is the country. And then over here we have the exchange name and then the name of the holiday. So as I mouse over each one, you can see in the window on the top, the highlight is going back and forth between these four, right? So all you have to do is get the class name. This is TD SCD07DVI-0. So I'll be completely honest, that sounds bizarre, it sounds very cryptic to me, but that is the identifier that they use, so that's what you have to search for, right? Like, I would call this, if I built this website, I would call this the dates, or the country, or the main exchange, or the holiday. They don't do that. Sometimes if they're nice, the people are nice, and they will give you something that's very meaningful. This means absolutely nothing to me, but that's the idea you have to look for. All right, and then do some parsing based on that. So here's another class ID. Again, super cryptic. I'm not sure why, but you see this a lot all over the place. You see this. So it's not intuitive. I agree 100%, but that's the way it's done, and that's what you have to look for to go ahead and to get these dates. So again, we're getting all of these appended into a list, exactly how we did before. Here's the list. We start with the empty list. That's why we have these blank square brackets here. I'm going to hit Control Enter to refresh it and run it. And here we have the event. So Tuesday, August 20th. The next one is the 21st and the 26th. Right? We have Estonia, Morocco, and Gibraltar. Let's see. Estonia, Morocco, Gibraltar, the first three right here. So it's working, right? It works fine. So it's a little bit intimidating. It's convoluted. It's complex. But stick with it. If you learn this stuff, you can do some really amazing things. And again, save yourself a ton of time if you're doing the same repetitive task over and over. Produce amazing results for your clients or stakeholders quickly, without error, and really save your sanity and not drive yourself crazy. If you had to go into this website every day and copy and paste this from the beginning, let me get this. From the beginning, go down a little bit, and then get the end. Okay, and then paste that into Excel. That is going to be time consuming if you have to do this over and over. Like in this case, I don't think these dates are not going to change, but some websites are very dynamic. Things are changing every minute, stock prices for sure, and some other things. Then when you paste in here, you get a little bit funky formatting. You would have to go ahead and clean this up a bit and get over here. Remove hyperlink. Okay, so it's not too bad, but you can see it's going to take a couple of minutes to get everything straight. And it's pretty mind-numbing too. If you create a process that can do this in 1 second, it might take you an hour, a couple hours, but you're going to save yourself several minutes every single day doing this, and the payoff is going to be huge eventually. So I think it's worth it to learn these things. Again, I'm going to save the code, post everything with the video. All you have to do is download the file, open it, copy and paste the code, and run it for yourself. And then take some time to explore the details and all the nuances of the data to see what's going on. Do some Google searches on things you don't understand, and I think you're going to learn a ton. So that's it for the video today. Hopefully this was interesting and enlightening for people. Thanks for your time. Have a great day.